Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the purpose of this ministerial statement is to provide the House of Assembly with a report on policy discussions currently held with the banking sector regarding matters related to caps on the over-limit fees charged by deposit-taking institution, financial inclusion or access to bank accounts, and a general fee approval framework. Mr. Speaker, members will recall that the Banks and Deposits Company Act 1999, which I'll refer to as the Act, was amended in 2022 to provide the Minister of Finance with the power to make regulations for the purpose of regulating any commercial or business fee charge or penalty to be paid by clients of an institution holding a deposit-taking license pursuant to the Banks and Deposits Company Amendment Act 2022. Mr. Speaker, subsequent to the amendment, the Ministry of Finance, working together with the authority, has developed a framework which provides for limits on fees which are charged in certain types of transactions should a person exceed an agreed credit limit, which occurs as a result of the relevant person's use of certain services, products, or facilities provided by a deposit-taking institution. Mr. Speaker, it is proposed to enact the Banks and Deposits Companies Over-the-Limit Fees Regulations 2024 shortly. Key features of these proposals are customer scope. It is proposed that changes should be applicable to all clients of a deposit-taking institution. This includes existing as well as new customers. Agreements. There will be a requirement for the terms and conditions to be set out in an agreement. Where a customer declines to accept the terms and conditions of an agreement, they'll be required to confirm in writing that they will not have access to the product, service, or facility beyond the agreed limit. It is proposed that over-the-limit fees would not be charged more than once per billing cycle per product, service, or facility. And it is further proposed that an agreement be terminated in writing by the customer at any time prior to the termination date of such agreement. And the termination of such agreement shall not invalidate the over-the-limit transaction. Mr. Speaker, it is proposed that different provisions of the regulation will come into effect on different commencement dates. It is likely that matters related to changes to client agreements will take effect on a later date, while the limits on fees which may be charged will come into effect on the publication of the regulations. Members are advised that the draft regulation has been submitted to Bermuda Bankers Association for final comments. Following consultation with the banking sector, members will be aware that some institutions have already taken steps towards meeting this commitment, while others have advised that they may either withdraw the service or they'll consider the impact on their operations based upon legislation which has been finalized. With regard to financial inclusion, Mr. Speaker, the Financial Action Task Force Guidance on Anti-Money Laundering, Terrorist Financing Measures, and Financial Inclusion defines financial inclusion as involving the provision of access to an adequate range of safe, convenient, and affordable financial services to disadvantaged and other vulnerable groups, including low-income, rural, undocumented persons who have been underserved or excluded from the formal financial sector. Mr. Speaker, members will be aware that the World Bank and the Financial Stability Board have documented the sustained deterioration of the provision of correspondent banking services by large international banking groups. Members would be aware that the costs of compliance to ensure retention of correspondent banking worldwide have significantly increased as companies react to developments in global regulation. This, in turn, affects a bank's ability and willingness to provide banking service to sectors considered particularly at risk by large international banks providing correspondent banking services. In response, countries are encouraged to increase their communication and outreach on supervisory practices to further contribute to a more differentiated risk decision making by banks. Following discussions with the Bermuda Monetary Authority and the Bermuda Bankers Association, the government intends to introduce a framework regarding matters related to basic bank accounts in accordance with the standards set down by the Financial Action Task Force and the National Anti-Money Laundering Committee. Although further discussion required with the banking sector, the ministry and the authority are close to finalizing a framework for discussion. Mr. Speaker, the framework will be guided by the general principle that persons who are currently underserved from a banking perspective or persons who have been de-risked for reasons other than the services banks are legally permitted to offer should be provided with access to a bank account to facilitate their inclusion in the formal economy. This policy approach is keeping not only with the guidance set down by the Financial Action Task Force, but also with the World Bank definition of the term financial inclusion, which has been defined to mean that individuals and businesses have access to useful and affordable financial products, services that meet their needs, transactions, payments, savings, credit, and insurance delivered in a reasonable and sustainable way. Mr. Speaker, with regard to the announcement in the throne speech regarding the general fee approval framework, following the approval of the over-limit fees, the Ministry of Finance, working together with the Bermuda Monetary Authority, intend to advance a proposal to address how other banking fees are addressed. Details of this proposal will be released to the public in due course. Apart from the fee initiatives, work is also underway to determine how to enhance the banking sector ecosystem. Work with Bermuda Monetary Authority, different reforms are currently under review to address the lack of diversification in the banking sector and the impact that the current state is having on consumers. Immediate touchpoints for consumers range from the mortgage guarantee proposal to enhanced conduct rules, open banking, and digital identification. As per the government's normal custom and practice, the proposal will always share with the Financial Policy Council and the Bermuda's Bankers Association at various stages of the process to help the government better understand which combination of reforms would best meet the government's objectives and what the aggregate impact would be. Mr. Speaker, Bermuda's banks and deposit companies are required to meet on an ongoing basis minimum licensing criteria set out in the Banks and Deposits Company Act 1999. The Act requires that institutions conduct their business in a prudent manner, including that they maintain capital and financial resources commensurate to the nature and scope of their operations. The capital requirements imposed seek to appropriately reflect their size and nature and scope of their business, and there is no intention to modify those requirements. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.